do it however long and short as you want it is. And the timer for today is Chris without an L, Nibby. And that's what the N stands for.
Thank you, Postmaster Chris with an L. I am today's timer report, and I will help everybody stay on time and on task. Normally, we have a light to augment our card cues, but since it was recently put out of commission, I have a conundrum of how do I implement a buzzer aspect of it. Since we now have cups of popcorn, if a person were to go over time, I'll just shake my half-empty cup of popcorn in lieu of the buzzer. So, anyway, without lights, we do have cards. And everybody has a set time goal for their speeches, and for a speaker with the example of 5 to 7 minutes, when they reach 7 minutes of their speech, they will get a green card, and it will be at 5 minutes. What did I just say?
You said 7.
I said, okay, I apologize. So, at 7 minutes of the 5 to 7 minute goal, there will be the green card. When they are halfway between the 5 to 7 minutes, they will get the yellow card, and when they have reached their goal of 7 minutes, they will get the red card. 30 seconds to a minute over, and they will get the, or pager, they will get a rattle cup. When we have our table topics, those speeches are set for 1 to 2 minutes. And when they reach the 1 minute mark, they get the green card. 1.5 minute mark, they get the yellow card. And 2 minute mark, they get the red card. And 2.5 minutes, they get the corn shake. And when we have our evaluators, they have the 2 to 3 minutes. And when they get 2 minutes, they have the green card. 2.5 minutes, the yellow card. And 3 minutes, the red card. I don't think I mixed up anything else after that, so there we go with our report.
Thank you, Chris, and way to be creative on coming up with a buzzer solution. I like that. Now we're going to start off with the speaking portion of our meeting, and to do that, I'm going to be inviting Tanya up here, and she's going to give us an 8 to 10 minute speech out of the Advanced Communicator Project, and it's an interpretive reading project, and it's titled Moonlight Sonata.
Halloween is fast approaching, and with that in mind, I thought I'd tell you a story to get you in the mood for the spooky things that will be coming forward this next few days. And you'll get to decide for yourself whether this is a treat or a trick. Moonlight Sonata by Alexander Woollcott. Dr. Barak reported that this adventure he had 2 years ago when he went down into Seven Oaks, Kent, to visit his old friend, Ellery Cazalet, who spent most of his days on the links, and most of his nights wondering how he would ever pay the death taxes on the collapsing family manor house to which he had indignantly fallen heir. This house was a shabby little cousin to Windsor Palace, and had a hoarse bell, which from the clock tower had been contemptuously scattering the hours like coins ever since Henry VIII was a rosy little toddler. Cazalet could only afford a doddering couple to cook and clean for them, and even the sumptuous gardens did whatever they pleased under the care of a single gardener. The gardener's real name was John Scripture, and he was assisted from time to time by an aged lunatic father who had rare lucid intervals, which he could be when he would be let out of his captivity under the caves of the lodge to putter amid the lewd topiary extravagance of the hedges. The doctor was supposed to come and stay with Ellery when he could, with the promise of some good golf and long nights of exquisite silence and a ghost or two thrown in for good measure. Barak called this decrepit manor in which he was to visit the Creeps, Seven Oaks, Kent. And when he arrived, it was to find his host away from home and not due back until all hours. Barak was to dine alone with a despondent Irish setter for a companion, and he was not to wait up. His bedroom was on the ground floor, and it was beautifully paneled, just like these walls here, except some old maid, hundreds of years before, had painted them all dark black with some paint they had gotten as a dowry. No one knows why. So it was very dark in his room. But there was only a candle to read by, and the light of the full moon came wavering in through the vines that half covered the window of his bedroom. And it is in this museum that Barak dropped off to sleep. He did not know for how long he had slept when he found himself awake again and conscious that something was astir in his room. It took him a moment to place the movement, but at last, in a patch of moonlight, he made out a hunched figure that seemed to be sitting with its head bent and engrossed in a chair that was right by the door. It was a hand, or rather a whole arm that he could see between the moonlit window and the doorway. And it was tracing a recurrent, irregular course in the air. At first, the gesture was teasingly half familiar. And then Barak recognized it as the one a woman makes when embroidering. There would be a hesitation as if the needle were being thrust through some taut, resistant madness material, and then each time the long, swift, sure pull of a thread. To the startled guest, this seemed the least menacing activity he had ever heard of ascribed to a ghost. But just the same, he had only one idea, and that was to get out of that room at all possible dispatch. His mind made a hasty reconnaissance. The door into the hallway was out of the question, or madness lay that way. At least he would have to pass right by that weaving arm. Nor did he relish a blind plunge into the thorny shrubbery beneath his window and a barefoot scamper across the frosty turf. Of course, there was the bathroom, but that was a small comfort if he could find a way to get out of it. So in a spasm of concentration, he remembered that he had seen another door just at the moment of this realization. He heard comfortingly actual sound of a car coming up the drive and guessed that it was his host returning. In one magnificent movement, whew, he leapt to the floor, bounded into the bathroom, and bolted its door behind him. The floor of the room beyond was quilted with moonlight, and wading through that, he arrived breathless but unmolested in the corridor. Farther along, he could see the lamp left burning in the entrance hall and hear the clatter of his host closing the front door. As Barak came hurrying out of the darkness to greet him, Cazalet boomed in his delight at such affability and, famished by his long cold ride, proposed an immediate raid on the kitchen. So the doctor, already sheepish at his recent panic, said nothing about what he just saw, and he was all for food at once. So with lighted candles held high, the foraging party descended into the kitchen and found the cook had left cold roast beef, cheddar cheese, and milk as a light midnight snack. But they stumbled over a bundle on the floor, and with a cheerful curse at that old maid who was always leaving something about, Cazalet bent to see what it was and let out a scream of surprise. Then by two candles held low, he and the doctor saw something they will never forget while they live. It was the body of the cook. Just the body. The head was gone. On the floor alongside lay a bloody cleaver. "Old scripture, by God!" Cazalet cried out, and in a flash Barak guessed. Still clutching a candle in one hand, he dragged his companion back through the interminable house to the room from which he had fled, motioning him to be silent. He tiptoed the final steps. That precaution was wasted, for a regiment could not have disturbed the rapt contentment of the ceremony, still in progress within. The old lunatic had not left his seat by the door. Between his knees he still held the head of the woman he had killed, and scrupulously happy, crooning at his work, he was plucking out the gray hairs, one by one.
have 1 minute for evaluations, and just so you know, during the evaluations, I should have set this up better, but Tanya was supposed to be reading a story to us, since that's an interpretive reading thing. So she was supposed to be reading a story to us, so you can't be docking her for not preparing her speech, and that's the whole point, is she's supposed to be reading it and expressing it well. So, I apologize if I left you in a bit of a conundrum trying to figure out what you're going to do for evaluation, but good luck. We have 1 minute.
Could I have some of those slips? Just to evaluate it for one.
All right. Now, for our second speech, Mary will be delivering a 10 to 12 minute speech, which is an inspirational speech.
Motivational.
Motivational speech, my mistake on that. And it is titled Outside of My Comfort Zone. Please help me welcome Mary.
Anything you want more of is found outside your comfort zone. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our distinguished guest, Alan Means. Anything you want more of is found outside your comfort zone. I've been in Toastmasters for almost 13 years now. Almost as long as I've been employed at Mayo Clinic. And in that 13 years, I have learned a lot. I've achieved my Advanced Communicator Gold. I've earned my Advanced Leader Silver. I've participated in multiple speech contests. I've hosted open houses. I've mentored over a dozen people, and I hope I've encouraged each one of you. I've given speeches on everything from being in a bus bay to almost blowing up my dad's assisted living facility with his oxygen tank. And 50 plus speeches in between. I have learned how to be confident in a large group, and I've almost learned how to speak on my feet. Admittedly, still a weak point for me. I've learned to collaborate with others on projects, and I've learned to plumb the depths of my thesaurus as I seek out alliterations, analogies, and awesome words of the day. But now, after 13 years in the very same club, Mayo Highlanders, it is time to step outside my comfort zone. So I've decided to transfer my membership to the Lunch Bunch so I can help them coach their club and hopefully in a few years be able to start one from the ground. But enough about me. What about you? Today I'd like to encourage you to do 3 things to help you step outside your own comfort zones. The first is to experiment. This is the place to try new approaches, to use humor even if it's not your strong suit. You may not end up on the stage in Goonies, but you know we're going to laugh at your jokes. This is the place to try outlandish gestures. Do you all remember Amit 3 weeks ago when he was hopping around like an Indian jumping bean? Showing us how not to use the laser pointer like a lasso, and instead using it to make his point. Outlandish gestures. This is the place. This is the place to practice what Joe practices and give spontaneous speeches. So what if you only go 2 minutes? Joe, I think you did that once. So what if you forget your lines? So what if you fall on your face? This is the place to fall on your face, my friends. Not when you're out in the meeting with your colleagues, or when you're on the elevator trying to give your 1 or 2 minute elevator speech, or in a presentation before your peers. This is the place to experiment. The next area is to purpose to make your next speech better than your last one. In fact, when you're done with your speech today, what I want you to do is when you go home or go back to your desk, find your manual, check to see what your next speech is, and start thinking about it. You've got 3 weeks to think it over, to mull it around in your head, to let it percolate, to talk it over with your family or friends, and I guarantee you in 3 weeks when you're starting to put that speech together, those ideas will flow so much better than waiting until the night before. Trust me, I know. How else do you make your next speech better than your last one? Incorporate the suggestions that people give you on your evaluations. There's a reason we do evaluations here in Toastmasters, and that's to help you get better. So make sure that you write those down and incorporate them in your next speech. And then finally, and I feel I have to put my soapbox out here, practice. Practice, practice, practice. Practice makes you more confident. It helps you to take control of the stage. And Sarah, I think of you when you gave us the Superwoman look. Practice, practice, practice to put polish and pizzazz into your presentation. Practice. So when you purpose to make your next speech better than your last, remember to incorporate the suggestions from your evaluations, think about your topic ahead of time, and practice. And then finally, the third area is to commit yourself to the club. 3 ways to do that. Attend as often as your schedule allows. Even if you're not on the agenda, you're on the agenda. You have a role to play, and your role is even more important because you're here to affirm someone when they're speaking by nodding, by smiling, which makes such a difference to the person up here. Which makes such a difference to the person up here. The second thing is to participate in special events. When there's a speech contest going on, raise your hand and say, I'll do that. Even though it scares the bejeebers out of you, take advantage of that opportunity to grow even more. I still remember the first speech contest I was in 11 years ago. So nervous. But after it was over, there were like 10 people from this club in that audience, and they encouraged me so much. I was walking 10 feet off the ground when I went to my car that night. And from then on, I was smitten. I joined as many speech contests as I could. When we have an open house, ask what you can bring. If we have a special event outside, ask how you can volunteer. And that leads me into the third area, is commit yourself to the club. When your officers next spring give you a call and say, hey, Ash, would you like to be the secretary next year? Or Sarah, would you like to be president? Or Beth, how about taking on the treasurer role? Say yes. Say yes to being an officer. You will be amazed at how we spend your money, at how they spend your money, how decisions are made, and how the inner workings of a club make such a difference. So 3 areas. Number 1, experiment with new approaches. 2, purpose to make your next speech better than your last one. And 3, commit yourself to the club. I encourage you to step outside that comfort zone so that you can be the best communicator and leader you can be, that you can help your fellow Toastmasters be the best communicators they can be, and that Mayo High Nooners can continue to be the best club throughout the Mayo enterprise. Until Lunch Bunch.
Oh.
Goodness. Well, that is a good example of what 13 years of taking your advice will lead to, a speech like that. So thank you very much, Mary. And now a minute for everybody to do their best at evaluating that. All right, that is your 1 minute for evaluation. And now for our final speech of the prepared speaking portion of our meeting. We have a speech by Mel, now being thrown out there as Melissa. It's a 5 to 7 minute flash fiction piece, and she'll be acting out a role or role-playing a role through it, and it's titled Independence. So please help me welcome Mel.
Daddy's a cool hustler. My name is Independence Angel Munson. I have red hair like sun flames that I tame into braids. It makes life easier on the road. Of course, I won't be on the road much longer. Right now, I'm driving us between Bradenton, Florida and Bedlamont, Louisiana. In Bedlamont, we're going to stay at the Dewdrop Inn. That's what I told Billy. Life on the road has been getting kind of tedious, one pool bar after the next, and putting up with Daddy. That's part of why I'm leaving. But Billy, he's the rest. Now, as I'm rolling down the road and it's nighttime and it's starry, I remember a few of the things I like. For instance, while I do hate my freckles that cover my chubby cheeks, I do like the way that Daddy tells me that they exist because the angels have been kissing my cheeks on account of my wildness. Though I'm not nearly as wild as he says I am. He's got me beat quite wild. And I love how on clear nights, sometimes when we're not between one place and the next, and when a hotel's just a bit more than we can afford, how we sleep in the truck bed, and he points out those old stars that have been hanging in the sky forever. Like there's something that might be permanent. Now Billy, who's following a few miles back, who Daddy knows nothing about, I met him in Bradenton, Florida, outside of Old Pete's, where there's still a few old pirates for Daddy to hustle. I was sitting outside there looking at the Gulf. I had my knees all hugged up to my chest like I like, just sitting out there. It's a regular place we've gone to for years. And Billy came out there and he said, "What are you doing out here?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, I bet you're waiting for me." And I told him, "I don't even know you." He's like, "That's all right. Your soul does." And I said, "This guy's crazy." That, or he's amazing. And we've talked a lot. I mean, it's been a whole week that we've known each other. But I'm not really sure which one he is. But I know I'll find out. I started pinching the side of my arm as we were driving down the road. It's getting so late and everything looks the same about now. And I rolled down the window and stuck my head out of it, and that woke Daddy a little bit. He said, "What are you doing, child?" I said, "I'm just trying to stay awake so we can get where we're going." All right, his typical mumbling. And as we get there and we pull in, I grab him a couple bags. I check us in this time because he's just not in the right state to. And we go up to the hotel room, and I know that I'm leaving, and I'm waiting. I'm glancing out the window, trying not to be too suspicious or anything. I wait for Daddy to fall asleep, and thanks to the whiskey, it doesn't take him too long. And once he does fall asleep, and he's sleeping sound, I go up and I kiss his cheek. Right where the crow's feet make the lines. I know I missed his eyes, but it's definitely time to leave. So I kiss those sad sleeping eyes, and I walk out the door, heading for, I'm not really sure what, but something better than it's been.
Thank you very much. That's what I love about these meetings is you always have such a variety in the speeches and something new that everybody has to offer. So now you have 1 minute to evaluate Melissa's speech.
Yeah, a long time ago, but I didn't follow it very well.
That's your minute. Now we're getting into, this is the halftime where we're getting ready for our evaluations, but to give our evaluators a little bit more time and give everybody else an opportunity to speak that doesn't have their name up on the board. We are now to the topic master portion where you'll be giving your off-the-cuff speaking. But before we do that, you may have noticed that we have a little bit extra going on here. We've got some treats in the bag, got some flowers in the front. We don't usually do that for Toastmasters. You may have noticed. And it may be a little bit of a small gesture for something that's been 13 years in the making. But we just wanted to do a little bit here just to give a little bit of appreciation to Mary and for what she's done for our group. And so to help me do that, I would like to ask Jennifer to come on up here. And she will lead the table topics portion of our meeting. Tell me what to do.
Thank you. My first question. Outside of Toastmasters, I've had the pleasure of working with Mary Peters for almost 12 years, more than 12 years. She's truly one of the nicest, caring people I know. My first question is, what is the nicest thing that someone has done for you in your lifetime? And I'm going to start by asking Abby to come up here.
The nicest thing that someone has done for me in my life. First, I wanted to mention the first time I ever met Mary, and then I'll go into the answer to that. I was at a Mayo training seminar, and this wonderful speaker was in front of the room, and I didn't know who she was. And afterwards, I asked a couple other fellow co-workers, who was that trainer? She has an amazing speaking voice, and her gestures are amazing. Her conference is huge. I want to go where she goes. I want to learn from her. And Mary didn't know this, but I followed Toastmasters, and I actually was in Lunch Bunch as well, and then I came to Pioneers. And so I was thrilled to see that you were here too. To answer your question, best thing someone has done. I have to say, one of my teachers in junior high, I was encouraged by others to pursue psychology and English, but my passion is art and design. This teacher said, "Mommy, you can't graduate and go on to school and study English. You've got to study this passion you have. It's driving you. But I don't know if I can really make a living at that. I just don't know." And she just encouraged me day after day. She followed me around everywhere I went, every day, until I said yes, and I gave in. And I'm very thankful that she did pursue that and encouraged me. And today I'm an art director at Mayo Clinic.
Okay, very good.
I am familiar with a few of Mary Peters' hobbies, and one of her hobbies is bicycling. In fact, just a few weeks ago, Mary went on or took a 50-plus mile bike ride around the Twin Cities. So my next question is asking, when was the last time you were on a bicycle, and where did you ride to, or what did you do? And if you haven't ever ridden a bicycle, because that is possible, what is your favorite outdoor activity? But if you have been on a bicycle, where did you go? What was the last thing you did? And for this one, I'm going to invite Nick, is it? Invite Nick down.
Fellow Toastmasters and guests. I don't really ride bikes at all, really, I guess, for exercise. The only exercise I really do is powerlifting, training for it. I have a nationals coming up that I'll compete in Las Vegas. I have one before regionals, but that's kind of like a warm up for it because a lot of the people they kind of rank you by, it's a stupid formula, but they take your body weight and then how much, the highest you ever squatted or deadlifted, and I'm at elite and that's 3 times your body weight. So I'll be the only one competing. It's an open powerlifting tournament, so I'll be the only elite one there, so it's kind of like, I won't really be competing because I'll beat the other people. But I'm really training for nationals, and that's about it. Sorry I don't ride bikes very much.
That was very interesting, thank you. Another one of Mary's hobbies is woodworking. So my next question is, if you could make any piece of furniture out of wood, what would it be and why? And for this one, I'm going to ask you to come on up. Okay, thank you.
Fellow Toastmasters and guests. I'm not a woodwork person, but if I have to, if I have to make something, the one thing I'll make is a kind of tree house, which won't be on a tree, but on in a platform, which is in my backyard. And I've been promising my daughter that I'll make her one day for last 3 years. And she asks me, Dad, when are you going to make it? And I will say, when the spring comes, because it's too cold outside. And when the spring comes, I'm like, okay, I'm getting the stuff ready, and I'll buy some tools. And then she asks in summer, Dad, where's that house coming up? And in my mind, I'm thinking, I didn't do anything except making that tree house in my own mind. And I was looking at my investment, and I need to buy this tool, that tool, and then things slip by and it's again winter. That has gone for a couple of years, but next year I'm sure I'll build that house.
We are at the end of the table topics portion, and with that, I'd just like to say, Mary, thank you for letting me use you as a subject today. And on behalf of the High Nooners Toastmasters, we'd like to present you with these fall flowers.
Thanks, Jenny. Thank you, everyone. That was beautiful.
Okay, now for our evaluation portion of the meeting. As a Toastmaster, I really enjoy this part because I just get to sit back and let Deanna run.
Today's meeting is very special, and I just want to say to Mary, you have been such a great inspiration, even just listening to your final speech for us here today. You left us on such a positive note, and I know you're going to do great work with the Lunch Bunch, and I'm sorry that you're leaving us, but good luck. You've been a great inspiration, and part of why we learned so much from our fellow Toastmasters is exemplified in Mary's speech today. So I hope if you're brand new to the club, you took something away from her speech, because it really the heart of why we're here. I do want to wrap up our evaluation portion of our meeting, which is very important for all of us Toastmasters, not just giving the experience of giving our presentations, but getting that feedback is so crucial for us as well. Our meeting did start on time. We're doing well for time today. We had excellent table topics, thanks to Jenny. And now I would like to invite our first evaluator up for Sarah to evaluate Tanya's presentation.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator Fellow, Toastmasters, and our guests, and most especially Tanya. When I found out that I would be evaluating you, I thought it was going to be a conundrum to come up with something, a good evaluation, because you're such a fantastic speaker. And the title of your speech was Moonlight Sonata, and as Chris mentioned, this was for an interpretive reading from the Advanced Communication Series. And I wasn't sure how to evaluate an interpretive reading. Unfortunately, she made an evaluation form, so I'll be going off of that. The first thing was the theme understandable and the storyline clear? I think so. It was definitely a spooky, creepy story introduced by mentioning Halloween, and that really sets the mood. The one thing about understanding if the author's purpose was clear, I don't know if with this format of the speech, if you can add in more intro about the author's purpose and maybe some background on the author and some more background on the story just a little bit without giving anything away. The only thing to think of there, to what degree did the speaker achieve the author's purpose in projecting the meaning and the emotions of the message? I think he did a very good job. And this one is has a lot of opportunity for vocal variety and gestures, which you use a lot of. And since it's kind of a spooky story, I think you can make it even more dramatic. I think you did a really good job, and you always do, with your gestures and moving around the room. But I think especially with the vocal variety, really mainly with the volume, to start out really quiet and just really get big on some of the scarier spots, maybe even like jumping on some of the parts that are even spookier. And again, I think you did a good job, but if you had to add more, that's what I was thinking about. How did the speaker emphasize the words, which were important in revealing the narrative's meaning and emotions? This story was full of a lot of words. It was kind of a grammarian's dream. I don't know right here from that part, but it's a lot of words. And if anything, going slower, and I don't know how you were doing on time, but because there were so many words, to go a little bit slower and draw some of them out a little bit more would have been effective too, but I think you did a very nice job with that. And you built to the story's climax very well. The climax at the very end, envisioning the lunatic pulling the gray hairs out one by one was creepy, and I definitely appreciated that part of the story, and you built to that very well. Did the speaker appear to be spontaneous during the presentation? That's a hard one to assess because it's a reading. How do you be spontaneous during a reading? And that, again, comes back to the only thing I think of as adding even more dramatic emphasis to that, jumping around maybe, even more like dramatic change in your vocal variety. All in all, I think you did a great job. Your pace was excellent. You mentioned that you were worried about speed. I think it was actually pretty good. I mean, you could slow down more for dramatic emphasis, but it wasn't hard to hear or anything like that. But thank you, Tanya.
I hope that those of you that are new took note that Sarah did a nice job of emphasizing what was positive, but she also gave Tanya some constructive criticism so that she can go back and improve for the very next time she does an interpretive. So great job, Sarah. Thank you. Next, I will invite Joe, our evaluator for Mary.
Give it to me straight, Joe. This is your last time.
Evaluating Mary puts me in quite a conundrum. Because Mary invited me to join this group 5 years ago. And she's been trying to help me do everything that she talked about for the last 5 years. So you should be evaluating me rather than vice versa, Mary. I will talk a few minutes about your way of talking. if there's one specialty that I think you have that is absolutely unique, is the contact you have with the audience. When you are in front of an audience, I don't really feel that it's a separate group at all, that you're connected with them in some enormously intimate way. And I just marvel at that. Now, I could go ahead and talk about gestures and all of the other things you're supposed to talk about in evaluation. You obviously are very professional, and I don't really want to take the time to do that. But I want to thank you so much for using this effort. Now, this was supposed to be your swan song. Now, that's a term that I've had a little trouble understanding because you didn't sing. But you certainly left us with 3 extremely important elements to participate here. And it was really a lesson how to become a Toastmaster. Now, how in the world am I going to give you a suggestion of how to make your speech better? That's tough. But I think if I were to make a suggestion, it would be something like, you gave us 3 wonderful things to do. To experiment, to become committed to improving our speech, and committing to the group. It might have been a little bit more powerful if you could have given an experience of each of these of your own. How you did each one of these 3 things, and how much effect it had on you. But believe me, for me to give you suggestions on speaking is completely overboard. I just love everything you do when you get in front of us. Thank you very much.
And our final speech evaluator is Ash, who is evaluating Mel, AKA Melissa.
Thank you, General Director and fellow Toastmasters, distinguished guests, especially with Melissa. I don't know which part of what is that manual is that speech, but I enjoyed your speech. There is one portion in your story I like, that is it's looking at the stars, and some of them are still there. And regarding the content, it's a good story, and the speaker, yes, vocal variety. You used vocal variety in your speech, and you have a unique presentation style. And regarding content improvement, I would like the story to have a couple of twists in the beginning or in the end. I felt like it is happening in a place just like in a 1 or 2 minutes kind of story. Probably if you could add some twist, that would be nice. And the delivery, you presented the material clearly and simply. And what can be improved? I was expecting a beginning. Probably I was looking at somewhere, but I feel like probably if you could add a beginning and the ending, I felt like you all of a sudden it's done. So you should have improved a little bit in that area as well. Otherwise, it was a great speech. I really enjoyed it. looking forward for more of such speech from you. Thank you.
And now we turn from speech evaluations to our grammarian report. So I'd like to welcome Beverly up here to give the grammar report.
Well, as they said before, this was a grammarian's delight. All of these speeches were just full. I started writing down things for Tanya's, and I got going, and I'm like, I can't write the whole speech. I mean, it just went from sentence to sentence. There were just so many things. Indignantly, contemporaneously. I got my glasses on. I should have them up here. Scrupulous garden, aged lunatic. You can just kind of visualize with the words. Mary, when she was going through things, plumb the depths of a thesaurus. Alliterations, the outlandish gestures, all wonderful things. And Melissa, when she was talking about the dewdrop inn, the knees hugged up, you could just kind of see what she was talking about. So a lot of wonderful phrases in there. We had wonderful speakers. I saw very few ums. There was, when Ash was up here, there were a few, but I think when he was talking, you could tell when he was thinking, he stuck in the but once he got going on a thought, he just, I think you're coming along very good. You did very well with that. And Chris, I had one little suggestion. When you were doing your cards, there was an and. I think you could have just stopped, said your sentence. Otherwise, I think that everybody did very well with things. I heard conundrum a wonderful amount of times. There was Chris and Sarah and Joe for sure here. So thank you very much.
And next, I'd like to invite Chris in without the L.
Without the L.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. I think everybody was afraid of the corn cob. You didn't even let me reach for it today. So with that in mind, I will let you know what we had for the timers report. For our first speech, Tanya was given a request of 8 to 10 minutes. She came in at 6 minutes 58 seconds. Mary had asked for 10 to 12 minutes, 8 minutes 38 seconds. Mel had asked for 5 to 7. That's correct. And 3 minutes 44 seconds.
Wow.
Now we're into the ranges with the table topics. Abby was at 1 minute 32 seconds. Nate, you got 1 minute 1 second. And Agatha got 1 minute 19 seconds. And then for the evaluators, Sarah, you came in at 2 minutes 56 seconds. Ooh, the closest to get the shake on that one. So. Joe, his evaluation was 2 minutes and 38 seconds. And Ash, your evaluation was 2 minutes and 34 seconds.